Hi, I'm Michelle Mercurio. Welcome to the show where we interview people who have ditched their plan to pursue their purpose. Let's dive in. I am so excited that you are here today and to actually physically be able to touch you and hold your hand in person because that hasn't happened in so long.
Yep.
And it is wonderful to be in your presence and to introduce you to the world. So why don't you tell us, Benita, a little bit about who you are?
Thank you, Michelle. It is so great to be here. It's so wonderful to have this conversation in person. I'm so excited. When you asked me that question, the first thing that came to mind was I'm a human. I'm
like that.
A messy, not in the black or the white, like living in the gray, human first and foremost. Like, yes, are there infinite parts of myself? Are there really aligned, truthful parts of myself? Absolutely, of course. Like, we all have that.
Mm-hmm.
But lately I've been really experiencing the unclear parts and the re-emerging into the world parts and who am I, and processing lots of different aspects of myself. So that feels like the most honest answer. I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am a friend, all of those roles. And then at this point in my life, I am a coach, and I identify more as like a holistic life coach. I don't know if I love any of those words. I don't know if any of us who play
I hate the word coach. I know. I get it. Exactly.
But it is a quick, title that helps people understand, that I'm here supporting people. And I came from a long career in the advertising industry and supporting predominantly creative people in creative departments or through the recruiting space, and then transitioned that into this holistic life coaching approach for people in the marketing, communications, and advertising industry, but beyond. I work with people across like a really broad spectrum of different professional paths now.
You're a human who works with humans.
I'm a human who works with humans. Well, I'm going through all my own human stuff.
Yes. And so what I love is right before we turned on the camera, we were having this really deep conversation about the question, what do you do?
Yeah.
And how we both hate it.
Yep. Because
we so much identify, our identities with the actions that we perform in, I'm just going to say, a capitalist society that isn't supportive of humans.
No.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
So at least here in the States, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. And then we quickly shifted out of that and realized that everything that is happening right now, coming out of, I'm not even going to say the pandemic's over. Is it ever going to be over? We're not sure.
Right.
But coming out into a time where we can actually sit together and know that, that we can be unmasked, and all of that together. What I will say is that I think that there's a lot of people struggling with their identity.
Yeah.
So I would love it if you would really remark on your identity now versus what it was maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that journey for 5 years, 4.5 years, I've had my own business. And 5 years ago, I left my last full-time job, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh. You and I almost did it at the exact same time.
That's amazing. Yeah, our
it's kind of
timelines,
cool.
I think, have been very similar. So like March, April of 2017, I realized I was being pulled towards something else, but I didn't know what it was. And then hired coaches, felt like I had some support, resigned from that full-time job, made that leap, and purposely did not want to have a plan. I didn't want to go into another job search. I knew I would take a bunch of patterns and old stuff with me. And I had been a recruiter, so I knew I'd seen thousands of people do this basically. And it was just like, I'm going to try to do it differently this time. And that in that leap came, I would say, a good 3+ years, at least 3.5 years of a real momentum behind that. It felt very exciting throughout the whole first 1.5 years for sure of the pandemic. It also continued to feel really exciting. My identity was linked from a professional perspective in that leap and then in starting my own business, and then that taking off fairly successfully and growing and just continuing on. And it was like, okay, this is amazing. Then there's something that happened this summer on a multitude of levels where I think that, like, I know it's like being in like a tumbler of rocks, the pandemic, like more and more gets polished, but more and more also kind of falls off or gets chipped away, or however you want to like envision or embody that experience. And I just started to really look at, like, where am I still striving? Where is there still a pull to like feel the need to have to do things based on fear, or based on what other people are doing, or based on sort of the shoulds? And those have been questions that I've been playing with for the last 5 years, but it's like becoming even more and more fine-tuned. So on one side, it's those things, like I'm seeing even more what I prefer, even more of my priorities. And then on the other side, we've been in 2 years of conditioning of fear, like afraid to be together in person, you know, for understandable reasons, you know, to a certain degree. Obviously, we don't want to harm anybody else. We don't want to get anybody else sick and pass things on. But how much of that is like in us as a pattern now, and maybe not as obviously necessary to be concerned about at the current moment. And so then looking at that piece, like, who am I based on this patterning that's happened, based on this conditioning? Like, oh, but I previously wasn't somebody who was afraid of being with people.
Right.
And I had a pretty
now we're like, people?
Is this okay? And like leaving the house, you're like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing. Like I said to Michelle, I wanted to come and do this in person because beautifully we're both here in Richmond together. For that reason, I could have easily done it remotely from home.
I've done ones with people in Richmond as well who are doing it remotely as well.
Yeah. And like, for whatever reason, right? And we have that option now, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
But like, who I am is really in this transitional place. So I'd also say too that there's a part of me that would say, oh no, I can't do a conversation like this because I don't have that solid sense of like, this is who I am in this moment. And that I'm like refusing to allow myself to believe that. That's not true. I absolutely know who I am. I am who I am, but I'm a transitional human being going through mucky, murky, weird stuff. And that's why I wanted to like show up and have this conversation kind of about like, how do you show up through confusing times?
Absolutely. Because I too was sitting in my office the other day and I was thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm actually meeting with people in person. I'm going to do a live interview again. Like all of them have been via, you know, online and you know, remote. And I was like, do I have to have a script? Like, what do I, and I'm like, what are you doing? Right. This conditioning of like, you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, we've talked about, I called the show Be the Plan, because it's really about ditching a plan and pursuing the things that you most innately know.
Right? Like just That's how I took the title. Like you are the plan. It's already in you.
Yes.
These external pressures of needing to perfect things.
And perform.
And be a certain way for certain people. Like obviously there's some aspects to that are helpful if you're trying to communicate a certain message.
Right.
And you want that, you know, to not be distracted by certain things. But other than that, it's just so false on so many levels. And we're obviously seeing this in discussions about race and gender and all versions of identity, right? Like, how can we create more and more space for people to just show up and be who they are?
I have another interview, Aurora Higgs. I don't know if you know her, but the title is, you know, I don't even remember what we titled it, but one of the things that came out of it is identity is fluid anyway. You know, and that is one of those things where we try to cling to what we were taught and what we were shown and what we have become our scripts. And that identity is rock solid, right? I am who I am.
It's like easy
that
labels.
Is my personality. I'm not going to change now. And I'm like, I don't know. I am who I am, and this human is not the same human from 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. This human sometimes isn't the same person as 2 weeks ago.
I know.
And recently even going through, it's amazing to me how many years I've spent just like peeling off these layers. And the other day, a big one that was still part of my identity just fell to the ground. And I was like, that's not me. I am not my thoughts. I am not my beliefs. I am not my breath. These are things that flow through me. And I know this in a brain level, but sometimes you have to feel it.
Absolutely. We can know something intellectually. I'm sure there's been studies on this of like, for an idea to, I know, like, especially about like who we are and like how we identify, we can know something intellectually for however long, I guess we need to, until, and it's a physical feeling for me, that integrating moment where something drops from understanding it intellectually about myself or others, whatever it might be, to like into your heart, into your chest. And for some people, it's into the gut of that sense of knowing, like, oh. And then I feel like that's where there's like a real either change in compassion for oneself, of allowing multiple aspects of identity, if we're talking about it in relation to that. It can be with anything.
Well, for ourselves and for others too.
Absolutely.
Right? Once that integrates within me, I realize that all of the things that I might think about other people, when I'm judging others, it's really subconsciously me judging me.
Myself.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think about when I do those moments of like, oh, well, it shouldn't be that way. Well, why not?
Yep.
And the whole I know thing, you're going to laugh because I know you're on my email list, and the email that's going out tomorrow is about the phrase I know.
It's an interesting
one.
And
then it ends with I feel.
Yes.
And I think that integration between what it is you know, what it is you feel, and that internal intuition, that internal self, that is what makes everything kind of coalesce and come together.
Absolutely. And there can be periods of time, so we were talking about this before we turned the camera on, where some of, based on like circumstances and, whatever's coming up to be seen and processed in life, can make that the combination between like the I know and the I feel more confusing.
It is
or
confusing.
Less clear. Like for me, I've gone through periods. I think I'll go through these little chunks, like a couple years here, a couple years there, where it feels like, whew, I'm pretty clear. Like I have, again, like a clear inspiration or some momentum or a path. And those boundaries or guardrails around whatever that inspiration is makes that kind of between head and heart more clear.
Right.
Then there are periods like right now,
yes,
which I am going through personally, where there's been some grief, some depression, some, again, the layers of this phase that we're in with the pandemic, 2 years of processing all kinds of fear, separation. Who are we? How do we engage in the world? And now that's shifting a bit again. Like all of that kind of confusion and unknowing and things that can feel heavy and dark can then lead one to believe, right, because of how it feels, like, oh, I'm less clear.
I'm less clear,
I don't
or
know.
I'm right back where I started from.
I'm back where?
That's bullshit.
That's all bullshit.
Sorry. No. Now,
we don't ever go back.
No, but I
know.
Personally, sometimes I'm like, God, I thought I dealt with this. And I'm like, oh, you're silly human.
Right?
Of course you dealt with it. And guess what? You're human.
Yeah.
You're going to do it again.
Somebody beautifully described for me years ago, right, that we heal in a spiral. Like we learn, we process, we live in a spiral. Yeah. And so there can be certain themes. So I talk about this really publicly too. I've been sober for many years. So I've been, in May, it will be 15 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's fascinating to come up on the year 15 and be like, what?
That's you now.
15
and
years?
You. That's
but like, and seriously a day at a time.
Yeah.
Like that only happened by not looking at it in terms of 15 years. But so, at the beginning, let's say, of that part of my life, there were some issues that were like coming around a lot, like quickly, I'd feel like I kind of got a handle on it and then would kind of come back again. And there's just this like tighter spiral. And then in life and in growing and learning and in healing and however people choose to do that, things, and I think with age and time, the spiral kind of loosens up. Mm-hmm. And certain themes aren't around all the time or coming quickly. But sure enough, even if it's a big wide spiral, if there's like a particular theme, you know, for me, it's certainly around my perfectionism. It's around striving. It's around all of the things we've talked about.
It's around success for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know, like you said, that striving, but it's around success. What defines success? And, you know, can I even say I have a great, insert whatever it is, a great business,
right,
if this month I don't have clients?
Right.
Do
you have a checklist? Does your mind work in checklists by any chance? Mm-hmm. So I have a little internal checklist.
And I'm so talk to us about your internal checklist.
So my internal checklist goes like this. And for whatever reason, I tend to go over the checklist when I'm walking up and down my stairs in my house. So that there's something about like taking steps or something where I just then do this thing in my head where it's like, okay, do I have a home? Do I have clients, and is my business doing well? Kind of that like links into money and like what's in the bank account. Okay, yep, that's all okay. How's my son? How's, you know, the child doing and moving forward in his development in life? How's my relationship with my husband, or like relationships in general? And then immediately it will go to, if those things are like okay in the moment, then it will go to like, oh, but that relationship and that friend who I haven't talked to, oh, I'm not sure about that one. And then, oh, that client I haven't heard from. And then, oh, that thing I haven't done. And it goes from the like everything that's in order so that I can, I guess, feel a sense of safety and security. That's, I think, why my mind does that, to like, of course, what is unsure, what is unresolved, what is not like in the nice little box.
Right.
I like to wrap presents with little bows on everything and feel like it's in order. And so now I catch myself doing the list. And I'm like, I'm going to put the list down. It's not like I say no to the list or that this is not a good thing or a bad thing. No labeling, but just like, all right, I see I'm doing the list thing. There's actually no list.
No, there is no
list.
I'm
going to put the list down.
I find myself to put my list down sometimes doing, did someone die? Right? Because I have all of this trauma around death, you know, and we all do. I think all humans do. You know, I think that in many ways my story started when I knew my life wasn't right, was when my nephew was born still, you know, in 2011. Wow. And, you know, we spent the day with him and he was beautiful. And I think about that moment and I'm like, okay, did a baby die? I know that sounds terrible, but one of those moments where I have this thing, and, you know, then I think about in the world, there are children, you know, dying too. And there will always be suffering. There will always be joy.
That's the messy humanness.
That is the human piece.
Especially in this culture in the US, we're not very well versed at talking about death.
No.
Like just in the midst of a conversation like this, right?
So I'll just drop I'll just drop death right in the middle of a conversation.
Well, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Like hate to, again, like drop something like that can be kind of hard to hear if that is something that is uncomfortable for somebody to process. But also the more comfortable I've become in myself and in my own skin is engaging with conversations with people who are talking about that as a natural part of the process of being human.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, and it does happen. And it does happen to babies. And it does happen to people along children, the whole spectrum.
And nobody actually deserves it, right? No, like I think we sometimes try to figure out like, well, they shouldn't have been there, or this happened, or oh my gosh, what did they die from? Yeah. Because thank goodness I don't have that.
Yeah,
right?
Like, what does that mean?
Right. And that is the kind of a fallacy for us to actually like look at that to make meaning of where we are,
to keep us, it's part of the list. We then put that on the list, right, of like evaluating other people's death experiences in relation to our life, so that we can feel safe in a moment, you know, in like, a moment. Oh, but that's not me right now, so okay, I don't have to fear that. But it's gonna happen.
I mean,
one way
you
or another.
The thing is do we fear it or not? And the thing is, I think everybody has a fear with, you know, passing and being gone, and what is it, does it all mean, and all of those things.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about your checklist and you're going through the steps, I do that too, where I come up with, like, I have my home, I have a business that is very successful in many ways. And just because if there's a week or two where I'm like,
Yep. Yeah, that like
that's normal, right?
inhale
And
of
then
the
it's
flow.
like, okay, it's just flow. Because anytime I start to like freak out about something, like I've missed the experience of being in the here and now.
Yep.
And living in this moment.
And connecting to what's actually happening. And I can say this now from this last 5 years of moving through this process as well, where I have moments of like that. It feels like an inhale to me, where you're like, oh, there's not a big like external flow out, or it just feels like a quieter moment. And I've had multiple of those moments, especially early on, the first couple of years, where it's just like, what am I doing? This is crazy. Like, are more people going to come? And then you move through enough of those where you're like, okay, this is just the natural rhythm.
Yep.
This is what happens. But that belief that like, I'm not okay, or like attaching to this like ultimate fear.
Right.
Well, and I really am working with thousands of people, honestly, over 17 years in the advertising industry, and tons of people as candidates, and then people inside organizations or as working full time. And this goes back to that professional identity piece. If we're so identified with what we do to generate income, to have financial abundance flow into us, if we identify so intensely with that, it's very linked to the primal part of our brain, the amygdala. And so money, job, professional identity. And if something is off with that, even the littlest bit, right? A week or two of just being like, oh, things feel slow right now. The amygdala fires. At least this is how I experience it. And it's like, something is slow or not right professionally, death. There's a real primal, like, oh my God, I'm not going to be okay.
Right.
And so that has been a fascinating thing to process for myself personally over the last many years, but also with clients, because it comes up when anybody is stepping into new, right? Oh, more alignment. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I'm going to explore this. Oh, I could create this new thing, or I could move into a new role, or whatever it is where we're out in the world in this more of our professional identity. If anything feels a little sideways with that, I really do think it goes to this core fear of death.
I do too. And I will say, doing people's brand stories.
So intimate.
It's never about what it is that you do or what you sell. It's about who you are and what you're here for. And I think about that. And there's a lot of people out there that tell stories about, what it is that they do and what they sell. And that's fine. I love working with the people who are here for something, really deep, like that deep connection. And if you're not here for that, that's fine. I might not be your person.
That's right.
And that's great. Yeah. I know people who could be your people.
That's right.
But when I think about this, it's never really telling the story of your business. It's really about telling the story of you. And it has to be about you because it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the connections that you forge when you actually drop the persona. That's one of my big rants in marketing, the persona.
Yep.
Personas don't buy things. People buy things.
Yep.
And people want to be around people that they like.
Yep.
And they know and they trust and can help them and connect with. And if you're not doing it for those reasons, then what the hell's the point anyway?
Yeah. That whole performative aspect.
Right.
That too, I felt that working in marketing, communications, and advertising, and that whole space is that the inauthenticity, the manipulation, that piece. I'm just so
I am not attracted to it.
I know. I just want to like pull away. And so, this place of being able to be more true about who we are and what's actually going on with us, and how I think that benefits everyone. Now, and so I can hear the like operation side of my brain going, yes, but that takes time, and that takes patience, and it takes compassion. And yes, it does.
Yes.
And
it's not a tip or trick.
No.
But guess what? Life is not a tip or trick. When you're working with your clients, it's not a tip or trick that is going to make life meaningful and give them momentum.
No.
It's like, meditate.
Just boom.
And then you're fine.
Just that.
You're just fine.
No.
how do you, I want to go back to the part of the discussion when we were talking about a little bit about grief.
Right.
How do you show up when you are grieving, depressed, coming out of a pandemic, trying to understand who the hell you are at this moment?
Yeah.
How do you have meaning in those moments? These are two separate questions.
Okay.
And how do you show up?
Okay. So I'm finding actually, how do you have meaning in those moments is what's really front and center, actually. So I certainly have to have that, like, I just used this example with a client this morning, but like there's a gentle fencing that goes on, like a little fencing match with the different parts of my brain. The showing up authentically in this is actually talking about it or saying, I'll get on. The majority of my client sessions are remote because I'm working with people all over the world. And I will say, I am feeling down today. I'm feeling kind of heavy. I'm feeling the weight of some things going on in my life and also, what's going on in the world right now. How are you feeling? And so just honestly answering that question, it can be a little bit, I guess you have to pick and choose like where and when you do that, because it does take time, for somebody to process like, oh, I'm really in a lot of grief today. But somebody might, if you're just in passing, that might be hard for somebody to actually process. But as often as I possibly can, just being really honest about where I'm at. One of the ways I answer that question too is like riding the waves, because it's so wavy, and it's been very wavy throughout the entirety of the last 2 years. But there are days where I'm like, I'm kind of on the upswing of catching a wave. And then there's days where I'm like, whew, I'm really feeling like that bottom and bottoming out. So I'll be really honest about that.
Which you were honest about that today when you came in.
Yeah.
I said, how are you doing today, Benita? And you're like, I'm riding waves.
Right. I'm like, I'm
like, me too. And then we both discussed how we wanted to do this in person because we wanted to be around each other.
Yeah.
And have a good, like, interaction. It doesn't mean that we have to be happy.
No,
it just means we have to be.
Piece can kind of fall away then. Like, oh, I can just show up however I'm feeling, and I don't have to feel like I was at my house getting ready, putting on some sort of armor to go do a thing to say I'm okay. Right. And that just feels awful. I don't know. I don't think I could even do that anymore.
I feel the exact same way. I was like, do I put on a ton of makeup today? Do I need to do something? And I'm like, you know what? I just am. Yeah, my hair looks a little frizzy, and things are a little things. And I did use the excuse to put on a little dress because I have not dressed myself. But I did that for me. Well, I did that for you, but I did that for me too. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun to be able to be like, oh, I am also this person.
Yeah.
That identity. So go on.
And then the showing up piece, it's like a flow between, I still want to get up and show up and do things. Like there's a part of me that knows that will help me feel better. There's certainly a part of me on some days that wants to absolutely just stay in bed.
Yeah.
Like that, I think many of us are feeling that right now. Like this, like, yes, I want to push past some things and have meetings in person and show up. And so I'll do those things. And then I'm going to need some rest. So on the days where I can, I will really listen to that. Yesterday was a day where I was just feeling really off. So I was able to move some things. I was able to let a group know that's near and dear to my heart. We had an evening meeting for a couple of hours, and I just knew I couldn't be there for that. Yeah. And the person who was actually leading the particular evening, I let them know and gave them hosting duties on the Zoom, and I signed off. And so, that there's a little guilt in there. If I'm really honest, like I am definitely, the things we've talked about, a recovering perfectionist, a recovering striver. There's a part of me that doesn't want to ever miss anything that I've said yes to or that I've committed to.
Right.
But the way in which the antidote to that is practicing saying no.
Yeah.
No, I can't do that today. I have to be really honest. I'm not feeling right emotionally, physically. I need to lay down and take care of my body. And I find when I'm really authentically true about that, and I say that to people, they know I'm giving them permission to do it in our relationship, in our interactions together.
Right.
That's really appreciated. And the response I think I almost always get is, of course.
Yeah.
Go take care of yourself. Right. Yeah. So I think permission around that has been amplified much more in the last couple of years. And then, it's this like flow between what is possible for me to do today, what can I show up and do in my like truth and my authentic self, and what is just not aligned, and can I say no, can I reschedule something from a place of integrity, obviously,
right,
not like
not
leaving
all the time,
people
right,
in the lurch in any way, but how can I do that where like it's possible, it feels like I can absolutely do that. And then really simple self-care, super simple, and I don't know if I even love that phrase anymore, but just simple taking care of myself.
It's been co-opted on by a lot
by
of
everything,
different levels, right?
You know, but taking care of myself. Right now, it's walking. It's really gentle yoga. It's eating as nourishing food as I can, but not being super crazy about that either.
Yep.
It's just like gentle, reasonable things that aren't like too much or too little.
Yep.
I would say.
I love all of that. I was smiling at the beginning of this because on my calendar now, I have put no people on certain days.
Ooh.
Like no peopling. We're not going to people today.
No, that's really nice.
On days that, like today is a very busy day.
Today's a big people day.
I have a big people day.
Yeah.
You know what tomorrow is?
No people day.
It's a no people day.
That's really nice, right?
Yeah.
So there's this like ebb and flow of then the processing and the integrating.
Yeah.
Right? And how different, I don't know, is that different for you than it was pre-pandemic? Was it like all people days pre-pandemic?
Yeah, yes. But I think that I tell people that, you know, my struggle in life is always boundaries, you know, where I feel great until I don't. So how do I trust myself and how do I recognize those things? It wasn't all peopling all the time. I would say when I first started to really get mindful of where I wanted to be and who I wanted to be, it started to fall off. So it's been almost 10 years now in that.
Yep.
But I find myself going to these moments where I'm like, I'm fine and I should do this. And I had one, you know, last fall recently. So last spring I did a no peopling couple of months. Yep. And then last fall I was like, why am I peopling so much? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're avoiding actually the things that you have put into place to care for yourself. And I'm talking about, you know, my non-negotiables are, you know, I have to box, I have to exercise, I have to have some sort of massive cardio because it keeps me sane and happier.
Great.
I have to meditate every day.
Okay.
And it has to be visualization every day. And it's not like the sitting there just going, right? It's not just, I have my own version of meditation. The world can have their own version.
Yeah, everybody, it's that unique. Yep.
Right. And so for me, you know, it's recognizing that it's okay to put on my calendar, this is a no people day. And when somebody tries to take that time on, I'm sorry, it's a no peopling day.
Yep.
And people laugh and I'm like, no, it's a no peopling day today.
I love it. It's a wonderful light way to gently reinforce that boundary for yourself and communicate that to others.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a wonderful thing. I love how you said too about showing up for you is really about like that care for self first. And then I think we get this idea that, hey, we're not allowed to change things or, you know, make our appointments differently. And we think it's the end of the world. Like we're, you know, I have the story of like, if I cancel something, I'll be a flake.
Yeah, like how is it perceived? How will it be judged?
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think that some of that, when I think about this, is it's not that big of a deal. That part is not that big of a deal. It doesn't have to be that serious.
Yep. There's a great phrase, a little like slogan that I learned early on in sobriety in the recovery community, which is, what other people think of you is none of your business.
That's right.
And it took me a minute when I first heard that, and somebody, you know, like sort of was sharing that with me as a suggestion, and I'm certain it was because I was like ruminating about what people thought about me professionally and in the like work environment, full-time job. And so, and that prompt really, like, I had to sit with that for a minute and go, oh wow, it's really not my business what other people think. I can't control that. I have zero control over what other people think of me. I can nominally control my behavior and how I show up and some of my thoughts and my emotions associated with that. But if I'm doing it from a place of integrity, whatever the decision is, and taking care of myself and can reschedule, can show up for whatever it is at another time and do those things, you know, from a place of care, then there's nothing I can do about how it's going to be perceived on the other side of me doing that.
I think that we also don't actually ever ask ourselves, or I will say I didn't ask myself, how do I feel about me?
Yeah.
And I think that when you're right. Yeah. It's nobody else. It's not your business what anybody else feels about you, but it is your business to know how you feel about you.
Yep. And if in not doing this thing, for me, I think that like a failure, again, being a recovering perfectionist, the other side of that is, am I failing? Right? Am I like not enough? Yeah. And in holding whatever boundary it is, right? Because that's what we're really talking about, is like setting these like really lovely boundaries for ourselves and then honoring them. In holding that boundary for myself, am I like actually failing if that's like a core belief and I'm going to that? No, I'm just taking care of myself.
Right. I am rereading Glennon Doyle's book Untamed, and there's a moment in there where she said your primary job is to disappoint others so you don't and not disappoint yourself.
Yeah.
Like disappoint others over disappointing yourself.
Yep.
Because and it's that line of thinking, because if you are constantly selling yourself out for the feelings of others, what's your life?
Yep. And ultimately for fear and lack of belief, right? If there's like I'm not enough if I don't do this thing,
right.
I won't get the next whatever it is, client, fee,
right.
Job,
right,
whatever the thing is that's associated to anything financial. If I don't get whatever that thing is, then I'm not enough. Oh, if I don't do this thing with this person or this relationship and I don't have that, then I'm not enough. And if it's coming from that place at all, we're selling ourselves short.
Absolutely.
We're just operating from fear as the motivator rather than our authentic truth.
Right.
Which, like, sort of to wrap all of this up, that has been this time of like being unclear, feeling low, a little depressed. Somebody close to me passed away at the end of January. So processing that grief, and it was sort of surprising how that came through. And in walking through all of these elements, like where can I continue to be like, it feels like even more and more true to myself. I know we have a friend here.
We have a spring gnat.
We have a little insect friend. Where can I be more, it feels like even more true to myself because I'm requiring more rest than I thought I would need, or more time away from people than I thought I would need. And that, I think, is surprising to parts of me. I'm like, I didn't know I would need this. Oh, look, I do need this in my life. And then, okay, can I honor that? How do I do this? And from it, though, the surprising part that continues to surprise me as a human being that feels like magic, more clarity comes, more opportunity comes. Having this type of really authentic conversation and not feeling like I have to be a perfect coach who has all of these things in order and I'm not feeling low and I know everything I'm going to do. No, I don't have to be any of those things. And look, more aligned, comes. Whatever.
Same. When I let go, love more. I say that all the time.
I love that.
Let go, love more.
I love that.
I love that we did this in person. I adore seeing your beautiful face.
Yours too.
I am thrilled, and we should do this again.
Yes, please.
And I thank all of you for joining and learning more about this magic human right here. And Benita, we will link to all of your links in the show notes where you can find Benita and her Create Radical Love business. I'll even link to your Creative Mornings talk that you did in Richmond, because I love that talk, and Creative Mornings is how we met.
Yes, it is.
So I am very grateful for that. But thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining me today. Go ahead and like and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you don't want to miss anything, click that subscribe button.